It's a very familiar sight, a Salvation Army band playing on a street corner. Today they played in front of the Newcastle Permanent Building Society head office in King Street as details of this year's Red Shield appeal were released inside. Representatives from the community were joined by the media in a luncheon to launch the appeal. The appeal chairman, John Pesha, says the Salvation Army will spend more than $1.6 million in the region over the next 12 months and hopes that the Red Shield appeal will raise just under half that amount. The target for this year's appeal is $465,000. Several leading media figures in Newcastle addressed the launch and each praised the Salvos for the job they do in providing drug and alcohol rehabilitation programs, welfare and senior citizen hostels and emergency services for the needy. The Red Shield appeal culminates this Sunday with the annual door knock. According to Captain Alan Peterson, the Salvo's Metropolitan Director, the appeal is vital to their operations.
To us it's very important. We're looking at a budget of $65 million across Australia in the next 12 months, and we're looking to raising $13.9 million to make up the shortfall, because if we had more money we would spend more money because the needs are limitless. We're hoping to raise $465,000 from the Hunter region, $225,000 from Newcastle itself. We do have a shortfall of $612,000 for the Hunter, but with reasonable expectations we should realise $465,000.
What sorts of people are likely to benefit from the funds raised?
This is the second year the college has run the courses in 3 teaching disciplines. Later this month, 25 students will be enrolled in both its mathematics and science program and 16 in industrial arts. The aim of the courses in the case of mathematics and science is to convert a college or university degree into teaching qualifications. In industrial arts, candidates must already be primary or secondary teachers wishing to convert their initial training. The head of the School of Teacher Education, Dr. Alan Taylor, explains why the courses have become necessary.
We're experiencing a severe shortage of secondary teachers at the moment, where some schools simply don't have access to mathematics, science, industrial arts and in some cases music teachers. So the shortage is present now, and without some form of remedial action is likely to grow acute next year.
Why is the college assisting in these particular subject areas?
Well, the college has expertise in these 3 areas. They're not the only areas of shortage, but we certainly have expertise and accredited courses which will allow for an alternate mode diploma in education for university graduates or for a retraining course in industrial arts. And we are looking towards providing accredited programs for teachers in these areas.
relationship to Lake Macquarie after last year's annual conference of the Sister City Association. At last night's council meeting, the proposal was outlined in more detail. A public meeting was also proposed to gauge whether community and service organisations could be enlisted as part of Council's Sister City Committee. Round Rock, a high-technology industrial centre, has a population of about 100,000 people, and like Lake Macquarie, it's rapidly growing. One of the main supporters of the project is Alderman Sid Brown.
We hope it will be funded through public participation. We're holding a public meeting on the 9th of August, and that will be to involve service clubs, Rotary Lions, the Chambers of Commerce, interested people, the ethnic community, tourist association, and anyone else that wants to be involved.
The department's optimism that the proposed cottage in Conrad Close can and will run effectively despite the strong opposition from nearby residents was voiced at a meeting of Lake Macquarie Council last night. The State Coordinator of Young Offenders Services, Ken Buttram, took advantage of public access to address Council. He provided a background to new legislation relating to juvenile offences. He also spoke about the running of the new cottage, which he hopes will be ready for its first residents in early January. Mr Buttram said he did not believe the dispute with residents would have been avoided through earlier consultation.
And I think that even if we'd gone to the neighbours before the cottage had been purchased, we'd have still found resistance, because people, even though people at Charlestown admitted that they agreed that there was a need for the cottages, they said that they really didn't want it in their street. And I think that even if we'd have gone there earlier than we had have, we'd have still met the same sort of worry and concerns.
Many residents are concerned under the new legislation for minors. You may have second and third offenders living at the cottage.
We'll have young people, and we've always said this, who have been involved in property offences. And they may be young people who have offended once or twice before, but who have been allowed home in the community on those occasions. They may have been admonished and discharged on their first offences. This time, the magistrate has decided that they need greater assistance and help.
Could this include offences such as car stealing?
It may include car stealing, but what would happen is that before any young person is involved in this program, there will be a full assessment. And if we have any doubts about the safety of that young person in the community, then that young person won't be incorporated in that program.
In a separate matter raised at a committee meeting last night, a recommendation was made to formally reprimand the Birigan Aboriginal Cooperative. The cooperative leases a property in Toronto from the council for use as a workshop. Council reports indicate a number of building operations on the premises have been carried out without its consent. The committee's recommendation, which will be put to a full council meeting next Monday, includes a warning that any reoccurrence will result in the termination of the lease.
We're rolling.
These are not your average police officers getting ready for a hard day on the beat. They're members of the District Anti-Theft Squad. They're armed with holstered handguns and they're wired to the police radio network. The difference is, these cops are full-time peddlers. 2 black 10-speed push bikes are the latest addition to the police force fleet. These young officers spend their days, and sometimes nights, patrolling areas where there's been a high incidence of break-ins or theft. They talk with the locals and pull up likely types for questioning, and it appears to be working. A recent run of thefts in the Bar Beach, Merriweather, Cooks Hill area has stopped. This is the kind of policing the association would like to see reintroduced.
Yes, I believe that's our number one obligation in our crime prevention, and for us to be out there and be seen and be in around the areas where crime is actually happening, is a deterrent and has been a deterrent for many, many years where they're operating. We've got squads here in Newcastle that are identifying themselves at the moment in that crime prevention, and I think that's what we're all about, and that's what the public wants us about.
How many extra policemen is the association asking for here in the Hunter region?
We're looking at 50, and they have been very carefully we've assessed the situation. We're looking at 50 police in the area, 16 of them to Newcastle Police Station alone. Those 16 we're asking for are already been taken up in these new squads or in other areas and haven't been replaced. They're out of that uniform workforce.
Present time.
Police Minister Anderson says there's no shortage of policemen, but a shortage of police doing police work. He says the state government is determined to shift police from clerical duties. Mr Anderson says the Industrial Commission is considering an application to employ 50 civilians to take over the paperwork and free police for general duties.
Well, gee, we welcome that. We do welcome that because we've lost 11 public servants in this particular station alone that we're looking at here and haven't been replaced over the last 12 months. And it's done effectively what Mr Anderson said, put bums back on seats.
I had hoped that it would be within 12 months, and that would be September or October. I'm not going to change that timescale at this time because that's what I endeavoured to do. I'm still going to endeavour to do that, but that'll only be mitigated by me having to have regard to what the recommendations are in that report and how long it takes them to implement them, and whether or not it requires some change in legislation, which of course is handicapped by the fact that the Parliament does not go back till the 24th of September.
Mr Stewart was equally vague on the future of the Port Stephen Shire Council's Salamander Bay commercial development. He says he has yet to receive a report from the inspectors on the project, but when he does, he won't involve himself in parochial concerns.
I'm only going to look at it from the point of view of financial viability. I don't look at it whether I like it or don't like it, whether I'm in favour of Woolworths or whether I'm in favour of Shoeys, or whether I want to go shopping at Salamander or prefer to go shopping in Nelson Bay. I'm not going to enter that sort of controversy, and that's the controversy that's going on in the Port Stephen Shire at the moment.
Mr Stewart was in Maitland to speak to representatives from councils affected by the road haulage of coal. He says councils must be vigilant in their fight for more money to repair damage done by coal trucks. And he says the government should foot the bill.
I would see it come from those Commonwealth State Road Fund grants which are made available, and to create here for Hunter Valley councils the proper sort of evidence of their needs, that it is a large part of Australia's economy, New South Wales economy, the export of coal and the extraction of coal for electricity generation here in New South Wales, and that because of that there is a great need to maintain the roads in proper condition and also to safeguard the environment of the Hunter Valley.
The councils have decided to send deputations to the ministers for roads, transport and mineral resources to get more funds for road improvements. And Mr Stewart says he'll go along with them to throw his support behind the bill. The fire at Yank's Pizza Store at the West End Shopping Centre on Wallumbye Road, Cessnock, started at about midnight. The blaze gutted the shop, and police say that the charred contents found today warrant more investigation. The arson squad was called in from Newcastle, and tomorrow an explosives expert will be brought in from Sydney. At this stage it's unknown how much the damage is worth, because police have been unable to contact the owner of the building. No one was hurt in the blaze.
After a pleasantly precipitous autumn, the Hunter Valley is looking its best for many winters, despite clouds of other kinds that are hovering over its primary producers. But even though many feel they're being fleeced, the annual cultivation of fields is continuing. Some early wheat has already germinated, and the patchwork quilt is a sight to behold. These rolling fields of freshly sown wheat would be any farmer's greatest delight, but in the 1980s they're also his greatest gamble, for if Mother Nature is kind, he'll be left to reap ample rewards, but if she's anything other than fully generous, he'll be left to recoup not only massive costs and lost time, but shattered dreams.
Last year we didn't do very well out of wheat. It actually cost us money to grow wheat. We didn't make any profit. It put us down the tube a lot, really, but we're going for another crop this year, and if the same thing happens, well, we'll have to rethink whether we sow the following year or not.
Even though Bill Reynolds is a big farmer by valley standards, he'll harvest more than 1,100 hectares of wheat on his 5,000 hectare property Pembroke this year. He's far from immune from the cost-price spiral, and it's that as much as the gamble of the weather that worries him now.
At one stage we could sow our crops and hope for a good return, and if we had it, well and good, that was wonderful. And if we had a failure, it wasn't so important because your costs weren't as prohibitive as they are now and you could afford to wear them. Today they're so extreme that it becomes a gamble. If we commit so many costs to the production of the wheat, we must take a good crop off, not to give us a profit, but just to cover those costs and hopefully a profit on top.
And what sort of... And those costs include around $60,000 on fertilisers and crop chemicals alone. Add then transport, labour and incidentals, and the bill is starting to get as big as the country. And don't forget machinery repayments and fuel for mechanical monsters like this $110,000 necessity. It'll bring $400 of diesel a day when it's cultivating, sowing and harvesting, taking another $50,000 out of a wheat return that's yet to be determined by the weather. To cap off the cost spiral, there's a lot of concern too for future prices, especially with the world market for wheat coming under attack from huge stockpiles of subsidised EBC and American product.
There are big stockpiles of wheat around the world. Our markets have been pretty secure. We have perhaps the frightening aspect of the Americans' trade war coming off against the EEC. This plan that they call BICEP is to try and get some of their wheat into the markets that the EEC has swamped with subsidised grain. They've promised us that they'll stay out of our markets, but if they're in other markets lowering the price of wheat to compete with the EEC, I can't see it as helping us at all, really.
The Hunter District Water Board handles an average of 10,000 tonnes of sewage a day, and a significant part of that is industrial and trade waste. Congealed oil and grease are common causes of blockages in sewer mains. Some high-strength trade wastes cause chemical and biological reactions which produce acids, all of which take a great deal of money to clean up and treat. Traditionally, the board has accepted those costs and passed them on to all ratepayers. Now, in line with its user pays water rating system and following the practice of authorities in Sydney and Melbourne, the board has introduced what it calls a fairer system.
We thought that the general ratepayer should not have to meet the costs of treating trade wastes which carry problem residues with them, that the person or the company, industry responsible for putting those trade wastes in the sewers should meet the costs of both transport and treatment when it gets to the works.
And how expensive has it been to deal with those wastes?
Well, we could say hundreds of thousands of dollars in processing, plus other costs in freeing up transport, that's the sewers, which get clogged up from time to time, and also some safety problems created by the nature of the effluent.
Water Board officers will regularly inspect all 700 trade waste facilities in the region. In some cases, industries may be required to install their own monitoring equipment. The Water Board says the system will have the added bonus of controlling and reducing pollution levels in the system.
We already have instances of cost to industry of a industrial process in New South Wales and Victoria have to be done differently because of the different regulations in the two states. And that's senseless as far as industry is concerned, and workers want to be assured that the best process, the safest process, is the process in which they're involved, and they want the same to apply in each state.
And how will your commission go about equalising that?
Well, we'll develop the standards in cooperation with the states. The states are fully represented on the commission, and then we'll ask the states to implement them on a uniform national basis.
Well, just how big is the problem of occupational health and safety?
Well, let's say that every working day in Australia there is an occupational fatality. A person is killed in the workplace, and that's not good enough. Every year there's 150,000 lost time injuries at work. In addition, of course, there are the workers' compensation covered cases of people injured to and from work. But at work, 150,000 people are injured. That's not good enough. And that's the challenge that faces this National Commission.